Moon bump theory.
Well, basically, it suggests that Meghan didn't actually give birth to these children and that she was wearing a prosthetic bump. And of course, lots of medical experts have come out looking at that video and saying it's just impossible for someone who's literally 9 months pregnant and about to give birth to dance in that way.
She delivered it like an actress delivered it. An opera responded going, wow.
Something big just dropped, and it's way bigger than anyone saw coming. After years of whispers, side eyes, and quiet talk behind closed doors, royal photographer Arthur Edwards is finally stepping out and saying what a lot of people have been thinking about Meghan Markle. And it's got people seriously talking. This isn't random gossip floating around online. Arthur Edwards has spent decades behind the camera, capturing some of the most unforgettable royal moments ever. He's been right there, up close.
Oh, I was there, hated the day. The day was a miserable day. I mean, it was a worst royal engagement I ever did, a royal wedding I ever did.
Seeing everything with his own eyes. No filters, no spin. And now he's speaking out in a way that's hard to brush off. People have questioned Meghan Markle's moves, her image, and how things really played out behind palace walls. But what Arthur is sharing adds a whole new twist to the story. It makes you stop and think. Wait, was there more happening this entire time? And the timing feels just as shocking. Why speak now after staying mostly quiet for so long? What changed? And what did he actually see that pushed him to finally say something out loud? This isn't the clean, polished version people are used to hearing. It's direct, detailed, and already stirring up major reactions. Royal life usually runs on a quiet system built over generations. Everything moves slow, controlled, and carefully planned. Every appearance, every step, it's all measured and presented in a very specific way over time. But when Meghan stepped into that world, things didn't just shift, they flipped fast. Instead of following the usual path, she brought in a modern, high-visibility style that stood out instantly. It wasn't about blending in, it was about being seen.
Are you buying that excuse that Meghan Markle used a fake belly to protect her real belly? I'm not buying this.
Actually, this does look like a moon bump to me.
Her approach leaned into visibility in a way people weren't used to. There was emotional storytelling, carefully timed moments, and a strong sense of control over how things were shown, and that kept people watching closely. It created a completely different kind of attention, less about formal royal duties, more about personal narrative. And that contrast? It got people talking fast, because it didn't match what the public had seen for decades. Now here's where things really started raising eyebrows. Royal pregnancies usually follow a clear pattern. Public appearances, photographers capturing each stage, and a steady flow of images that give people that classic royal moment.
And I travelled the world with him, and I did really enjoy working with him. But, you know, now I really don't care if I ever see him again, because the way he's behaved towards the king and our queen and his brother and his sister-in-law is appalling.
It's something audiences expect without even realising it. But this time, that pattern didn't play out the same way. It wasn't just different, it felt like something important was missing. And that's where Arthur Edwards comes in. A photographer who has documented the royal family across generations just shared a detail that made the whole situation even more confusing. He revealed that during that time he was actually told to keep his distance, and that raised a lot of eyebrows. This is someone who's been right in the middle of some of the most important and personal royal moments in history, from huge public events to quiet close-up glimpses of Princess Diana. His camera has always been part of the story, so hearing that he was suddenly pushed back like that, people noticed fast. That move didn't just change who had access. It changed how the public experienced everything. The usual way people connect to royal milestones through photos and real-time moments was suddenly gone, and without that familiar lens, things started to feel off. There was a gap, something people couldn't fully explain, and it only made the curiosity grow stronger about what was really happening behind the scenes. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Even without the usual photo coverage, the attention didn't fade away. It just shifted direction.
To see or hear Meghan Markle's belly pop, you're going to see these people's faces. And I can tell you that one of these people is now speaking out.
Instead of traditional media moments, the spotlight moved toward controlled platforms like interviews, documentary-style features, and major media deals. Meghan stayed highly visible just through a completely different route. And that kind of shift, it doesn't just happen randomly, it shows a clear change in how attention was being handled. She didn't just step into the royal family, she stepped straight into the centre of modern media and knew exactly how to work it. Almost right away, every move felt sharp and intentional. Whether she was speaking, showing up somewhere, or even staying silent, it all seemed like it had a purpose behind it. People weren't just watching anymore. They were trying to figure out the reason behind every move. This goes beyond titles, ceremonies, or old-school royal traditions. It starts to look like a bigger shift in how public image is controlled at a higher level. And one question kept coming up again and again. Why are there so few widely recognised natural pregnancy photos of Meghan Markle? That's not a small detail in the royal world. So when Arthur Edwards finally spoke after staying quiet for so long, it only pushed more attention toward that exact question. Royal stories usually follow a familiar pattern. Big announcements, public excitement, cameras flashing everywhere, and those iconic balcony moments people remember for years. That's what the public expects without even thinking about it. But this time, the story didn't start that way. Instead, it opened with a noticeable gap, a shift in how things were shown, and a level of media distance that stood out immediately. And when you compare it, the difference is hard to ignore. When Kate Middleton steps out, it quickly turns into a huge media moment. Photos everywhere, headlines rolling in fast, coverage non-stop. But when Meghan stepped out, the reaction felt completely different. The tone shifted, access tightened, and the usual media flow seemed to slow down all at once. And people definitely noticed that change. Arthur Edwards, who has spent over 40 years documenting the royal family up close, saw that shift unfold right in front of him. Clearly, this isn't someone just guessing from the outside. Arthur Edwards has been right there in the middle of it all. He's witnessed some of the biggest moments in royal history, from massive public events to deeply personal milestones. His photos didn't just capture history, they helped shape how people see the monarchy over time.
I agree. I'm not a Meghan Markle fan and I don't defend her. And there's all sorts of inconsistencies and hypocrisies. But, you know, she's an actress. She's not the brightest cookie in the basket. There's no way Kate would do anything like that.
So when he points out that something felt off, people don't just ignore it. They pay attention fast. And according to him, when Meghan's major life chapter was unfolding, the usual royal structure just wasn't there. No standard photo ops, no familiar media setup, no clear access for photographers to capture those expected moments. Instead, there was this silence, and not the calm, routine kind. This was different, the kind of silence that instantly makes people start asking questions. And strangely, that silence pulled in even more attention than constant coverage ever could. It stood out in a way that felt impossible to ignore. For someone often linked to sharing personal experiences and shaping her own story, this approach felt like a sharp contrast. It wasn't just about being less visible, it was about flipping the entire idea of visibility on its head. Even experienced photographers and media insiders were left trying to figure out what caused such a clear shift in how everything was handled. The questions didn't just pop up, they spread fast and kept building. People started wondering what was really going on behind the scenes. Was this about protecting personal space? Or was it something more strategic, like controlling every part of the narrative? Those are two completely different moves. Privacy is expected at that level, no doubt. But when it starts looking like full restriction, people notice right away. And when that level of control lines up with official systems and tightly managed coordination, it creates a situation that draws even more attention. It stops feeling like a normal adjustment and starts looking carefully planned. That's when things shift from casual curiosity to full-on analysis. People begin connecting dots step by step, trying to make sense of everything. At the same time, Meghan didn't disappear from the spotlight at all. In fact, she stayed visible, but in a very specific, controlled way. Appearances were selective, content felt curated, and every moment shown to the public seemed chosen for a reason. So people were still seeing her, just not through the usual royal access they had gotten used to over the years. And that difference made everything feel even more intense. On one side, you had the traditional royal system, which usually allows open media coverage during major life moments. On the other side, a modern approach built on timing, precision, and tight control over what gets released. This wasn't a small shift. It felt like two completely different systems clashing at the same time. Meanwhile, the media didn't back off. They leaned in even harder. News outlets kept asking questions, speculation kept growing, and the demand for clear answers only got stronger. Expectations built up quickly, especially with so many missing pieces in the story. And through all of this, Arthur Edwards stayed patient, watching closely, waiting for that one defining image, the kind that usually clears everything up in royal history. But that moment never came, and that absence, it only made everything feel even more unusual. Because in royal history, those defining images almost always exist. Those moments usually become part of the royal timeline, locked in, remembered, talked about for years. So when that expected moment didn't show up, it stood out even more than non-stop coverage ever could. And then suddenly, everything shifted again. It started with a short clip, just a few shaky seconds, but it spread fast and grabbed attention instantly. In that moment, Meghan Markle, visibly pregnant, lowers into a squat, stands back up, and turns, with an ease that caught a lot of people off guard. It looked simple at first, but the internet didn't see it that way.
Meghan Markle has posted a cringy video of her and Prince Harry dancing in a hospital.
That clip got replayed again and again, with people trying to figure out exactly what they were watching. And online, things moved fast. Communities jumped in immediately, breaking it down frame by frame. People paused it, zoomed in, slowed it down, and replayed it from every angle possible. What seemed like a normal movement suddenly turned into a full-blown debate, pulling in thousands of opinions. Almost instantly, some viewers started questioning it, wondering if that kind of movement matched what they expected to see. Others pushed back just as hard, pointing out that every pregnancy is different and doesn't follow one rule. That back and forth created a clear divide, and it only made the conversation louder. Then came a flood of added opinions. Medical viewpoints got mentioned, personal stories were shared, and suddenly everyone had something to say. Platforms like Twitter and Reddit filled up fast, with users building timelines, comparing clips, and stacking up different theories. And it didn't slow down. It kept growing hour by hour as more people jumped in. Over on YouTube, creators took it even further, turning that short clip into long breakdown videos. They analysed every detail, replayed moments, and treated it like something that needed a full explanation. What started as a quick, viral moment turned into extended content that kept the topic alive and circulating everywhere. The tone shifted just as quickly as the clip spread. Instead of celebration, the focus moved toward curiosity, doubt, and constant questioning. Headlines leaned into the mystery, pulling even more attention into the situation. The more people talked about it, the bigger it became. At the same time, official responses stayed minimal. There wasn't much said to directly address the growing noise online, and that silence? It didn't calm anything down. It made people even more curious. Without clear answers, speculation filled the space and kept building momentum. Meanwhile, Meghan's public image still appeared polished and controlled. Photos and videos showed soft lighting, clean visuals, and carefully presented moments that felt more styled than spontaneous.
Obviously, when William was born and Harry was born and George and Charlotte and Louis, we got great pictures outside the hospital. I remember, and William and Catherine especially, they made such an effort to show the whole world their new baby. Archie Harrison, Mountbatten Windsor, was the name and had nothing to do with the royal family.
Everything looked intentional, refined, almost too perfect. And that made some viewers look even closer, searching for something more natural and unfiltered. Then another detail came out, and it added a whole new layer. Arthur Edwards revealed that photographers were given clear instructions to avoid certain angles and specific moments. That one statement hit hard, because it changed how people started looking at everything that came before it. For some, it still pointed to privacy and protecting boundaries, but for others it felt like something more controlled and restrictive. Once that idea entered the conversation, it didn't fade. It spread fast. Theories started stacking up. opinions became stronger, and the divide between perspectives grew wider with each passing day. One question kept repeating across every discussion. If everything was simple and straightforward, why did it feel so tightly managed? Why did access seem so limited during such an important time? That tension between what people expected and what they were seeing kept the topic alive and constantly evolving. Every major story reaches a point where a new voice changes the direction completely, and in this case, that shift didn't come from an official spokesperson or a royal insider. It came from someone unexpected, someone who claimed to have noticed small details that never made it into the public view. She wasn't part of the royal system, didn't hold any title and didn't have formal access, just someone close enough to observe but not positioned at the centre. And the moment she suggested that the public version of events might not fully reflect everything happening behind the scenes, the reaction around her changed quickly. The shift was immediate, and noticeable conversations that once felt open started to slow down. Messages that would normally get responses suddenly went quiet. Opportunities to speak or share seemed to disappear without explanation. It created a strange atmosphere that people could feel even if no one directly addressed it. There was a kind of unspoken tension that settled in, not loud or obvious.
Remember when Diana was delivering Harry or William? There was complete quiet. No one knew. Cameras couldn't get even anywhere near the hospital.
Sure, but we
let
didn't
alone
have
in the
mobile
room.
phones then.
What?
We didn't have mobile phones then.
But it was so private, and there's a dignity with privacy.
Yes.
And I certainly wouldn't, if I were pregnant, dance like
But subtle enough to make people think twice. It felt like a quiet signal, almost like a warning without words, suggesting that certain topics were better left alone, and that feeling only added more weight to everything that had already been building. For people who have followed the royal world for years, this kind of situation didn't feel completely new. Moments like this have come up before, where even small comments or personal observations seem to bring unexpected consequences. There's already a history of individuals speaking out and then suddenly finding themselves pushed to the side. Names like Paul Page, a former royal guard, have been mentioned in the past as examples of how quickly things can shift when private experiences become public conversations. According to various reports, this situation appeared to follow a similar pattern. What began as normal, polite communication slowly started to change tone over time. Interactions that once felt easy became more distant, and conversations reportedly carried a different kind of weight at the same time. Opportunities that were once available seemed to fade away without any clear explanation. But here's where things took an unexpected turn. The more pressure it seemed she was facing, the more attention her claims started gaining online. Instead of fading into the background, her words began circulating even faster. People started asking a simple but powerful question. Why would such a strong reaction follow something that was described as a small observation? That contrast made the entire situation stand out even more. She didn't have a large audience, no major platform, and no media machine supporting her voice. But sometimes attention doesn't come from reach, it comes from reaction. The way things unfolded around her made people look twice, not just at what she said, but at how others seemed to respond to it, and that's where things become even more interesting. In structured environments like the royal system, loyalty and alignment have always been a big part of how this whole system runs.
The thing that strikes me is her lack of understanding and recognition of the role that she had or has in the royal family. And, both of them have been on the record repeatedly saying they don't want to be living their lives through the lens of a camera and in a goldfish bowl and all of that. And then they take the camera into the most private of rooms where you're about to deliver your...
It's not just about what gets said in public. It's about staying inside very clear boundaries at all times. And the moment someone steps even slightly outside of that space, the response can come fast, and it's usually controlled behind the scenes. Because behind the polished images, the public appearances, and those perfectly timed statements, there's always a deeper system working quietly in the background. Nothing is random. Communication is planned, shaped, and adjusted, depending on the situation. Every detail matters, from what gets shared to what gets held back. And even those moments where nothing is said at all. And sometimes, those quiet gaps, they raise more questions than any headline ever could. The conversation around Meghan kept growing. Some observers started noticing a different pattern. It didn't look like an attempt to completely shut things down. It felt more like the story was being guided in a very specific direction. Not loud reactions, not public pushback, just quiet, precise moves happening behind the scenes. Because if there's one thing the royal system has mastered over time, it's how to respond under pressure. When attention builds, the reaction isn't chaotic or rushed. It's measured, organized, and carefully timed. That kind of approach doesn't erase controversy, but it definitely reshapes how people see it and talk about it. It works almost like a long-standing public relations machine built over generations. Every situation is handled with control, awareness, and a deep understanding of public perception. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is sluchino. And every move connects to a bigger picture most people never fully see. Behind closed doors, reports suggested there were ongoing discussions about media strategy. Every statement had to be reviewed, adjusted, and approved before going public. Every word mattered. Every sentence carried weight.
Meghan at the Albert Hall. How many weeks pregnant was she supposed to be? Was it about 8 weeks? And she looks as if she's at least 5 months pregnant. And also, why is the belly several shades browner than anywhere else? It's not supposed to be brown.
Nothing moved forward unless it lined up perfectly with how it would be received. And that kind of pressure? It's intense. No one wants to be the one who says the wrong thing or adds more attention to an already growing situation. That's why responses often come out cautious, controlled, and sometimes very limited. And as online conversations started picking up speed, one phrase kept coming back again and again. Never explain. It sounds simple, calm, even, reassuring at first, but in reality, it often leads to silence instead of clear answers. And that silence can spark a completely different reaction, because the internet doesn't just forget and move on. Once something catches attention, it sticks. It gets shared, reposted, revisited, again and again. Silence doesn't erase the questions. It can actually make them feel bigger. While all of this was unfolding, Meghan continued building a strong, polished image on a global stage. Her appearances, projects, and messaging stayed consistent and carefully presented. But at the same time, back in London, things felt way more complicated. Behind the scenes, officials were reportedly trying to balance two difficult things at once: holding on to tradition while also adapting to a fast-changing media world, and managing both at the same time. That was never going to be simple. They were walking a very fine line, and it showed. On one side, there was pressure to protect the monarchy's reputation at all costs. On the other, there was a clear effort to avoid looking too controlling or overly involved in the public eye. That balancing act created a response style that felt careful, controlled, and at times, almost too cautious. Because of that, communication started shifting in a noticeable way. Statements became less direct, updates felt more limited, and the overall flow of information tightened up fast. It wasn't that nothing was being said, it's that everything felt filtered, measured, and carefully chosen. Press briefings started sounding more vague, with answers that didn't fully match the questions being asked. Even experienced figures like Arthur Edwards, who spent decades with close royal access, seemed to be kept at a distance. Moments that once felt open and routine suddenly looked restricted, and people noticed that change right away. And that shift started to mean something bigger. It wasn't just about one situation anymore, it pointed to a wider pattern in how information was being handled. Nothing was openly denied or removed, but it felt like key details were being carefully managed, organized, and kept just out of reach.
She is literally kneeling all the way down. One of those people reached out to me, but not before this person reached out to the newspapers, complaining that the palace was literally threatening her, that the palace had tried to bribe her, and when that didn't work, because she really dislikes what's happening and she wants to come clean, and she has been trying to tell people.
At the center of it all, the monarchy has always relied on two core things: tradition and stability. Every move, every decision, every response connects back to protecting those foundations, especially when public conversations start getting into more sensitive territory. And when discussions began touching on timelines, royal titles, and internal processes, the tone shifted again. These aren't light topics. They go straight to how the entire system works and how people understand it. That's when everything started feeling more serious and way more closely watched. For generations, the line of succession and everything around it has been handled with extreme care. Even small questions can carry serious weight in that world. So, when online conversations started pushing into that space, the usual calm approach suddenly felt more urgent and much more controlled. At one point, there were even rumours about a press secretary known for giving answers that sounded complete, but didn't actually reveal much. Responses became so carefully worded that even direct questions didn't lead to clear answers. People were left listening closely, trying to read between the lines, but often walking away with nothing solid. History has already shown one thing clearly. Anything involving the royal family can turn sensitive very quickly, especially when personal decisions become public discussion. Situations like this have happened before, and every time they show how fast attention can build, and how carefully everything has to be handled. But now, it's a completely different environment. This isn't the kind of era where headlines fade quietly. This is a fast-moving digital world where reactions happen instantly. Clips go viral in minutes, opinions spread across platforms, and conversations don't slow down. They keep evolving in real time. Every little detail matters in this kind of space. A single image, a quick pause, even a small expression, it can all be captured, shared, and analysed again and again. What used to stay behind closed doors, now it can turn into a global conversation overnight. Almost instantly, the shift from private moments to full public discussion started happening faster than ever. What used to stay quiet didn't stay quiet for long. Commentators didn't just sit back and watch, they jumped right into the story. They reacted, broke everything down, and kept the conversation moving non-stop. What once felt like distant royal tradition suddenly started looking more like ongoing content, with people following every update in real time. And that's exactly where things took a sharper turn. The focus moved away from long-standing roles and structure and shifted toward how fast public perception could change. Not over months, not even weeks, sometimes within hours. Because in today's media world, it doesn't take a massive event to shake things up. Just one unexpected moment, one short clip, or even a small detail that doesn't quite match. And suddenly, it's everywhere. And once that kind of attention hits, it spreads fast and pulls more people into the conversation. In this situation, attention locked onto a detail that most people never expected to question. Early reports claimed that a well-known medical professional was involved in the birth of the Sussex child. It sounded clear, structured, and exactly like what people expect from official statements.
On May 6th at 3:02 a.m., Frogmore Cottage. This is a public announcement. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex used the services of a surrogate. We apologize for any misunderstandings. To this day, nobody has debunked that tweet as fake. In order for a child to be in the line of succession, it has to come from the body of the woman. Why would Meghan Markle be faking all those big stomachs? You know, that big belly, the belly swaying back and forth. She was huge. She was overdue. Now when Spare came out, we know that story is absolute horseshit.
But then, something didn't line up. A separate statement connected to the doctor's family seemed to suggest a different version of events. And that contrast, people caught it immediately. Just like that, uncertainty stepped into a story that originally sounded straightforward. Now there were two different narratives moving at the same time. On one side, the palace presented one version. On the other, parts of the media started discussing something else. And that split, it created confusion fast. People didn't know which version actually showed the full picture, and that one inconsistency didn't just fade away, it flipped the entire conversation. For a system known for being precise and tightly controlled, even the smallest contradiction can stand out in a huge way. And once people noticed it, the attention didn't stay contained, it exploded. Online spaces reacted instantly. Conversations spread across platforms, with users comparing timelines, official statements, and every tiny detail they could find. Regular viewers turned into full-on analysts, breaking things down piece by piece, trying to figure out what didn't match. What started as a small detail quickly became a major talking point. It pulled even more attention into a story that was already under the spotlight. The more people looked, the more the questions showed up, and the harder it became to ignore. But instead of stepping in to clear things up, The response followed a very familiar pattern. Silence. No detailed explanation, no direct correction, just a pause that felt intentional and carefully controlled. And that silence. It didn't calm anything down. It did the exact opposite. It left everything wide open with no clear direction for the public to follow. And the moment that gap appeared, it filled up fast, with theories, questions, and non-stop speculation. Because when people don't get clear answers, they don't just move on. They start connecting the dots themselves. Every missing piece turned into something people focused on. Every unanswered question became its own discussion. And it just kept circulating. In online spaces, stories like this don't fade quietly, especially when there's already a spotlight on them. As things slowly started to settle, a bigger picture began to take shape. The royal system may be highly experienced when it comes to handling internal matters and controlling information, but the modern digital world plays by completely different rules. Information now moves fast, almost impossible to contain. Once attention builds, it doesn't just disappear. It keeps cycling through posts, videos, and conversations. People revisit it, reanalyze it, and keep it alive long after the original moment has passed. There's an unspoken rule online. If something isn't clearly explained, it won't be ignored. It'll be investigated from every angle. And that's how stories turn into trending topics, repeated clips, and non-stop analysis that refuses to go away. But in royal tradition, silence has never meant nothing. It actually carries meaning without saying a single word. It's not just about staying quiet. It's about sending a message without speaking directly. And no one understood that better than the late Queen. She didn't rely on constant, public statements to shape how people saw things. Instead, she used subtle details, small, quiet signals that only careful observers would notice. People who followed royal appearances closely knew one thing. Nothing was random. Every object, every position, every background detail was placed with intention. One moment that really stood out happened during a Christmas broadcast. At first, it seemed small, but the impact was much bigger than anyone expected. Viewers noticed that a framed photo, one that had appeared before, was suddenly gone. No explanation, no mention, just an empty space where it used to be. At a quick glance, it could have been brushed off as a simple change. But for those paying attention, it didn't feel random at all. In royal settings, nothing is placed without careful thought. Every detail goes through layers of decisions, so even the smallest change can feel intentional. Some tried to explain it away. Maybe it was just a layout update, a simple refresh. But long-time royal watchers weren't convinced. They understand how structured these appearances are, and how rare it is for something to change without a reason behind it. Even the smallest shift can carry weight. When something familiar disappears, people notice, and questions follow. Because in that world, it's not just about what's said, it's about what's quietly shown. The Queen's style was never about loud responses or public back and forth. She stayed calm, controlled, and precise at all times, choosing subtle moves over big reactions. And that approach became part of how the monarchy handles sensitive moments. That one broadcast proved just how powerful silence and small details can be. Without a single word being spoken, a quiet adjustment sent a strong signal, and people didn't miss it. It was subtle, easy to overlook at first, but incredibly effective for anyone paying close attention. That's really how this system works. It's not built on loud announcements or fast reactions. It runs on precision timing and carefully placed signals.
How fair do you think it is to say that this has been driven by Meghan?
I think you've got to look. Harry was the greatest of all the royals as far as we were concerned. And he suddenly turned into probably, as I say, the most unhappiest and difficult to work with. And there's only one common denominator, and that is when he got married.
No confrontation, no direct explanation, just small, controlled shifts that carry meaning without ever saying it out loud. And history shows something people have picked up on over time. When things suddenly go quiet at that level, it doesn't always mean everything is fine. In many cases, it means something deeper is happening behind the scenes. And what came next only made that silence feel even more important. Most royal stories build toward a clear, visible moment. There's usually a point where everything clicks into place and the public gets a full picture. But this situation, it didn't follow that pattern at all. Right when questions around the birth were reaching their peak, attention suddenly shifted. Fast. All eyes turned to one place, Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. Almost overnight, that location became a major focus. It was mentioned everywhere, tied directly into the story. So naturally, people expected something simple. Confirmation, clarity, a clear answer to settle everything. At first, it seemed like that's exactly what happened. A public congratulations message appeared online, and it gave the impression that everything was straightforward and confirmed. But not long after, things started to feel less clear. New comments began to introduce uncertainty, especially as conversations around certain clips and timelines started spreading online. Suddenly, what looked simple didn't feel so simple anymore. And the response that followed? It didn't give a direct yes or no. Instead, it leaned on general policies and timing, pointing to guidelines that were in place during that period. The wording felt careful, structured, and very controlled. And because of that, people started reading it in completely different ways. That's where things really got complicated. When clear answers aren't given, people don't just stop. They dig deeper. Some saw the response as standard procedure. Others felt like it was avoiding the real details on purpose. And that kind of communication? It doesn't end a conversation, it stretches it out. Without clear answers, the discussion keeps growing. More opinions, more theories, more breakdowns. And in a fast-moving digital world, that only makes things more intense. Instead of settling the situation, the careful wording added another layer to the story. It kept people locked in, questioning, analysing, and trying to figure out what was actually being said, and what might have been left out. Online communities didn't hesitate. They jumped in right away. People started digging into every detail they could find, comparing images, studying backgrounds, zooming in on the smallest things. Nothing was too minor. Every detail became part of the bigger puzzle. Screenshots spread fast, clips got replayed again and again, and side-by-side comparisons started flooding timelines across every platform. What began as simple curiosity quickly turned into a full breakdown process. Regular users switched into analyst mode, picking apart everything, from room layouts to where equipment was placed. Nothing felt too small to matter. Every tiny detail became part of a bigger puzzle people were trying to solve. At the same time, the hospital didn't change its approach. The response stayed consistent, professional, measured, and focused on privacy. No extra comments, no deep explanations, just the same steady message repeated even as the noise kept getting louder. And while all of that was happening, Meghan's public image didn't shift at all. Every appearance, every visual, every release stayed polished and carefully controlled. That consistency stood out. Everything looked refined, intentional, and tightly curated in a way that made direct challenges difficult. And that contrast? People noticed it right away. In a time where everything is shared instantly, every moment, every angle, this situation still held unanswered questions, and that alone made people stop and look even closer, trying to figure out what might be missing. Just when it seemed like the conversation might start slowing down, a familiar voice pulled it right back into focus. Arthur Edwards, someone with decades of first-hand experience around the royal family, spoke again, and one line stood out above everything else. "We were told to stay away." That statement carried serious weight. It wasn't just about missing photos or limited access anymore. It pointed to something bigger. When people started putting everything side by side, the restricted access, the controlled visuals, the carefully managed responses, it didn't feel like random decisions anymore. It started to look like a pattern, and that realization only made the conversation stronger. More attention, more discussion, more people pulled into a story that just wouldn't settle. When everything gets lined up, the lack of photography, the small details that don't fully match, the carefully worded responses, even outside confirmations that seem slightly off, it starts forming something much bigger than a single moment. It stops feeling isolated. It starts feeling connected, like multiple pieces building into one ongoing story. And that's where the real intrigue kicks in. Because this was never just about one image or one event. It turned into something deeper, a closer look at how a global institution manages its image under constant public attention. In a world that expects openness, every controlled move stands out even more.
I would say step one would be to confirm this room, find out where it was, find out that very room, find out which room it was, and go look at it. If it's at that hospital or wherever it is she says she was, go make sure that's the hospital room, that it exists there, because it could be somewhere else, who knows.
One explanation people point to is privacy. Public figures do have the right to set boundaries. That part is completely fair. But when those boundaries look this tight, this consistent, and this noticeable across multiple moments, people naturally start asking more questions. The pattern becomes harder to ignore. Another angle that keeps coming up is control, not in an extreme way, but in terms of shaping what the public sees, what gets shared, and what stays out of view. Because in today's media world, controlling the flow of information can be just as powerful as the information itself. And no matter which side people land on, the conversation isn't slowing down anytime soon. The outcome still feels the same. The story is full of gaps. The timeline keeps sparking debate, and people everywhere are still trying to piece it all together. That curiosity hasn't gone anywhere. If anything, it's grown stronger. For an institution built on visibility, tradition, and public connection, even small moments of uncertainty can stand out in a big way. And in this case, that uncertainty didn't fade. It expanded. More attention, more questions, more people pulling into the conversation. This doesn't feel like a simple royal story anymore. It's turned into something closer to a modern media puzzle playing out in real time. Every detail gets examined, every moment gets replayed, and every bit of silence, it carries weight. That's what keeps people watching. Because when a story leaves room for interpretation, it doesn't just end. It keeps evolving with every new perspective that steps in. Now everything shifts to one big question. What does Arthur Edwards do next? Because after everything he's already hinted at, stepping back completely doesn't seem likely. Not when his words have already pulled so much attention back into the spotlight. Arthur isn't just another voice. He's someone with decades of real first-hand experience. He's been just steps away from some of the most defining royal moments ever captured. And when someone like that starts opening the door, even just a little, people expect more. And that's where the anticipation really starts building. There are a few ways this could go, and each one matters. He could stay careful, releasing small details over time, just enough to keep people talking without fully stepping into the center of it all. That would match the steady, measured tone he's known for while still feeding the curiosity. Or he could go all in, a full interview, a detailed breakdown, maybe even a clear public statement that lays everything out. And if that happens, it would shift the entire conversation instantly.
No stress there. Not even a little bit of stress. None. And there should be there because she's getting ready to have one of the worst painful things of her life, having a baby. And when that happens, you look forward to the event, but you don't look forward to that pain. And it's so bad, a lot of women can't remember.
Because it wouldn't just be speculation anymore. It would be coming directly from someone who saw things from the inside. But there's also another possibility. He says nothing more at all. And strangely, that silence might be just as powerful. Because when someone with that level of access pauses after saying something like, "We were told to stay away," it sticks. It leaves people thinking, questioning, and watching for what might come next. It keeps people wondering what else he knows and why he might be holding back. At the same time, media outlets are watching closely. If Arthur drops even the smallest follow-up comment, it could spread fast and bring every part of this story right back into the spotlight. That's the kind of influence he has. One sentence, just one, could completely shift the tone of the entire conversation. And timing, that matters just as much as the words themselves. If he chooses the right moment to speak, especially when things start to calm down, it could instantly pull everything back to the surface again. Right now, everything feels paused, but not quiet. It's the kind of pause where people are watching closely, waiting, and trying to predict what comes next. Because if Arthur Edwards steps forward again, it won't just add to the story, it could reshape how everything is understood. And after everything that's unfolded, one thing is clear. This story isn't finished. It's still open, still being talked about, still raising questions that people can't ignore. From the missing moments to the limited access to Arthur Edwards' statements and the massive online reactions, every piece has added another layer to something much bigger than it first looked. Now, it comes down to you. What do you actually think is going on here? Do you see this as privacy being protected? Or does it feel more like a carefully controlled narrative? And how do you take Arthur Edwards saying, "We were told to stay away"? Does that sound normal to you? Or does it stand out as something unusual? What about the media shift? Do you think the way visibility was handled changed the story completely? Or was this just a modern approach in a fast-moving digital world? And that viral clip, was it taken out of context? Or did it raise fair questions worth talking about? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is one of those topics where every opinion adds something new. The more people break it down, the clearer, or maybe even more complicated, it becomes. If you found this interesting, don't forget to hit that like button so more people can jump into the conversation. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next, especially if new details start coming out.